So first, I want to thank you all for taking the time to attend this workshop. I'm excited about it. Hopefully you are. Hopefully, if you've been to some others, that they're going well. I know there's some people here that attended the session that I had last year, and I wanted to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions. And I have a few others that are going to be joining me for today's session, and I want to go ahead and thank Emmy with International Enrollment, as well as Dr. Michael Dixon with Graduate Studies in Enrollment. And so I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves when we get to that part, but they're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in their areas. And then also Corinne Parsons with Senior Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions. Corinne is going to be helping to field questions. So as you have questions, please submit them in the chat and submit them directly to Corinne, and then she's going to help make sure to get those to me. I do understand that we may not get to all of the questions, but we will be taking them down, and I'll follow up with those that we didn't get to individually, should we have that happen. So as I said, I wanted to keep this high level in the sense that we can go over, we're going to go over a state of admission enrollment right now as it relates to spring, where we are at this point, then go over kind of what the landscape looks like, our goals, some of the challenges and strategies that we are implementing in terms of overall enrollment, to give you a sense of things being different now than they were before, even prior to COVID, but obviously with COVID, that presents some significant challenges as well. And so I know there may be questions about the impact of COVID and maybe what we're doing there, and then we'll address those going forward. So let me start by giving an update. I'll start with undergraduate enrollment in terms of where we are with spring. So currently with spring numbers, with our head count for continuing students, we're at 5,394. Of that, 428 are new, for a total of 5,822. It's down slightly from where we were at this time last year for spring. These numbers are slightly different. They were as of the beginning of this week. And as you can see with the credit hours as well. Of those numbers, there are 200 RN and BSN online undergraduate students, for a total of 1,473 with credit hours. Now, of those students who are eligible, are currently eligible to enroll but have not enrolled, as of earlier this week, we had 833 students. Again, that number has changed. There has been some significant outreach happening in terms of our advisors, advising centers, and faculty. We're also working with a vendor to help do some of the outreach. They are doing some work in contacting students. Our approach has been this year in terms of targeting those students who, based on their unique situations. Obviously, we have students who have a hold in the Bursar's office, and between working with the Bursar and financial aid office, seeing if there's anything that we can do to help with that situation, to all the way to students that have no hold, nothing holding them from registering, and doing outreach and contacting them to see what their plans are for returning. So we're continuing to do work there. On the new student end, as far as new students coming in for fall, we're looking at fall now. As of earlier this week in applications, we have 3,887. The number you see in parentheses is in comparison to where we were at the same time last year, just over 2,900 admits. And then the intent to enroll, that is something that is different about this year. The intent to enroll are students who have been admitted and they have contacted us through a process that we have to let us know that they, at this time, do intend to enroll for the fall. That number now I know is actually over 700. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see what our top majors are of all the students that we have admitted, and what are the areas of interest that we have there. One thing to note with looking at the numbers, I do want to caution looking at, especially for fall, for new students, looking at exactly where things were at the same time last year as if all is the same. We're not comparing apples to apples. COVID had a very significant impact on how the recruitment processes work, even to what students have access to and how they've been able to even be able to take tests, entrance exams such as SAT or ACT. As we know, families have been impacted with reduction of hours or loss of jobs. So there are a number of things that are impacting it. What I will say is that through November to now, we have continued to see an increase in applications and admits over what we have previously, which that is important. That is a trend that we don't typically see, and one that is a very positive trend given where we are right now. At this time, I do want to ask Dr. Dixon if he can unmute or be unmuted if you are muted, to give an update on where things are with graduate studies for the spring.
Certainly, Rashad. Thank you very much for the introduction and the opportunity to join you this morning. And thank you to everyone for participating in this very important session. The numbers I present here in the table are for the spring semester upcoming, beginning next week. We currently have enrolled a total of 1,732 students. Again, as Rashad mentioned, with the undergraduate numbers, these are as of Monday morning, so they have increased a bit. This number is up 16.16% over where we were in January 2020. Of that number, 1,504 are continuing and 204 are new students. Out of that total of 1,732, 56.7% or 983 are enrolled in our MBA online program. This total number of students for our graduate enrollment in spring 2021 will be generating, or is generating as of Monday, 11,138 credit hours, and that is an increase of 23.15% over the same time last year for spring 21. So you can see the credit hour number is a little bit higher than the headcount number. This is indicative of a change that I've seen over about the last 9 months since COVID affected us. It seems that per capita, graduate students are taking a larger number of credit hours than they had previously. And of those 11,138 credit hours, 6,102 or 54% are enrolled in the MBA online program. We're working to enroll as many as we can out of the 158 students who are eligible to enroll, but who have not yet done so. And below that, you see some data on our funnel. We had about 412 applications for this semester, of which 242 have been admitted. And as I indicated earlier, 204 have enrolled. That's all for the report on graduate studies spring enrollment. Rashad, thank you for the opportunity to speak about it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that update. So I want to move now to giving everyone an idea of where we are headed and what we're facing in terms of the landscape. Where you're looking at here are some projections on the total number of high school graduates nationwide and what those trends look like out through around 2030, 2031. As you can see, it's really not that far. We're talking about 10 years from now, but so we're really not that far out. And given that the recruitment process starts and takes at a minimum of 18 months. I mean, it's really not that far out. And what we're facing is in terms of over the next 3 to 4 years, beyond that, a significant, very significant decline in the number of high school graduates that are even available to enroll at colleges and universities. So when we're looking at the high school graduates, what's not taken into account, just looking at this particular graph, or when we're talking in general, are the number of students who actually go on to a college or university. When we're looking at the Midwest region, and what I've highlighted here is Indiana, you can see that the same trend is there. The line is there where we are now, but in particular, when you think about Illinois, and Southern Illinois actually is a part of our primary market for recruitment here at the university. It is at a very steep decline. To get a sense of how Indiana fares in all of this, it's about 9% of all the grads in the Midwest are Indiana. One of the things that has been a little bit different about our region, our state in particular, and then in particular in our region, Southwest Indiana, is while there had been some declines already happening across the nation, there had been some, although slight, some growth here in Indiana, particularly in Southwest Indiana. What that means is just as we are doing and everyone else, other colleges and universities looking to see where there are more high school graduates, or where is there a trend that's either flat or growing, which would bring more competition to our area. Now, going forward, there's as you saw, there's projected decline. So from the last couple of years out to the next 2 to 3 years, it's relatively flat with the increases and decreases. So our focus at a higher level is focusing on our primary market. We have traditionally enrolled around 80% of our incoming new students, traditional students from our primary market. And when I speak of primary market, unless I'm being very specific in saying Southwest Indiana, I'm talking about portions of Southern Illinois as well as Western Kentucky, which presents some unique challenges for us, given that those are technically out-of-state students. We are generally the only, of our peers, the only institution that's in a situation where there are 2 other states included within the primary market, and being in an area that does not overlap with the largest metro in the state, being Indianapolis. So that's a very unique position to be in. It's one that there are some other universities across the country that are in similar situations, but not one really in our area. So Evansville is within the 100-mile radius. And I should define that, the 100-mile radius being the primary market. Evansville is the metro. So we have to look at where we are in terms of market share, and what can we do with market share, especially whenever we see that there are going to be declines in high school graduates, again, talking traditionally, and then the competition that has already built up in our backyard. We have to look at what that means for market share, and how do we increase market share, and increasing that market share over time, what does that mean in terms of numbers? So this graph gives you a general idea of the Southwest Indiana market and what the market share has looked like for us. And then what I have put in as far as the latter half of this chart are goals and targets based on general projections that we are seeing. Obviously, those could change, which could significantly change the numbers. And there is some fluctuation in there. These numbers are coming from the state report, Indiana, which typically lags around a year or so. We have done some other analysis, but I wanted to give you a sense of, in general, in Southwest Indiana, as it relates to public schools, public high schools, what that total graduate number looks like, in comparison to the number of students who actually enroll in college and how many of those students have enrolled here at USI and what that means in terms of our share of the students. In general, we're doing a really a solid job in terms of getting students, but we have not maxed out the market share. So that has been, or that is our primary focus, not only just Southwest Indiana. We do have to include the other areas of our primary market, and we are and have implemented some strategies to focus on that. So as you can see, focusing on the market share versus just the total number, we have to maintain and actually increase just to be where we have been. If you look back to and seeing that those numbers are moving around a bit, but we're still not at the point where we were, say, in 2011, even with more market share, those numbers. So some of the key challenges that we're facing, although a lot is a laundry list, I wanted to just point out a few of them. A dependency on traditional credit hour production of just traditional students. As I've just spoken about quite a bit, gaining traditional student market share in a market that is beginning to decline and will be declining significantly as we look forward, as well as fierce competition, very fierce competition, and some changes into national recruitment rules, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So some of the strategies that we have employed to look at increasing our primary market share, optimizing our scholarships, and financial aid to leverage in our primary market, targeted approach to digital marketing, working very closely with Kendra and her team in marketing and communications, and then significantly increasing our engagement and follow-up with admitted students and increase our enrollment from early applicants. So when we look at the various trends, and when we look at criteria of trying to identify where do we get most of the students, and taking everything into consideration, the time of application when students apply, it has shown up as being very significant. The bulk of our class, over 70% of our students who actually end up enrolling, their application was submitted sometime between August and January. So to be able to focus in on that group is key for us. So we have implemented enrollment strategies or enrollment phases. Phase 1 to target students who are applying in that time frame, in collaboration again with marketing and communications, with housing, with orientation, working with the advising centers. A very collaborative effort to make sure that we are engaging those students earlier and at a deeper level and broader level than we have previously. So students who are applying or have applied during that time, they can submit the intent to enroll. We do not have an enrollment deposit or tuition deposit, which is a challenge for us. I'll be honest, it's a challenge for us because it makes it very difficult for a student to let us know that yes, they plan to enroll. Therefore, it gives an inability for us to change up the conversation. So essentially, once a student is admitted, until we implement some other things for them to do, such as housing and orientation and those things, there's really not a lot that we can do. That has changed this year with the implementation of the intent to enroll form. Those students, as long as they had submitted it by January 15th, are able to have early access to housing assignments, to get a yard sign, to get early access to orientation, as well as some other things. And so that has been very helpful. As I said, we've had over 700 students to commit to that. Now, addressing those key challenges that I mentioned before, and going in a little bit more detail, the dependency on traditional credit hour production, we have to, and we are looking at ways in which we can generate more revenue per student or per credit hour versus being dependent on specifically the number of credit hours that are coming in. And just to help you understand what I mean by that is we can have students to come in and generate or take 15 credit hours per semester as a freshman, therefore equaling 30 credit hours per year. But if they brought in 20 credit hours, depending on how those were applied and when they show up, it creates challenges for us to project in terms of revenue based on 30 credit hours per year. Now, the challenges for us is the state is continuously, not just Indiana, but Kentucky, Illinois, nationwide, continuously creating ways for students to take college level courses while in high school, therefore bringing in more credit hours when they enroll. So that's a challenge to assume that there's 30 credit hours per year per student. What that means is that we have to do more in terms of our leveraging with aid, looking at partnerships throughout the community, partnering with high schools, whether it be programming, looking at community colleges and doing partnerships there, in a sorts of embracing and seeing how we can be a part of a pathway for students. And we are looking at all of those things and addressing them. Gaining the traditional market share in a declining market, which you mentioned before, again, better strategic use of aid and leveraging. And we are doing that. We have overhauled our scholarship and grant program. And so we are addressing that, and we'll be able to see going into next year how that worked out for us, or some of those changes, and whether or not we need to make some adjustments. And then the fierce competition that I talked about. Simply, we have to implement creativity and innovation in our program development, continue to be collaborative with our enrollment efforts as it relates to other markets, online, graduate, international, all of the ways where we can collaborate together to bring in students that relieves some of the dependency on an area that we know does not exist in the way that it has before, while continuing to innovate there as well. And then we have the national recruitment rules to deal with. In the last 2 years, there was a change in which colleges and universities can now actively recruit students even after they have committed to a different university. So for example, if a student decided prior to that time, if a student decided that they were going to enroll at USI and they were being recruited by Ball State, if that student told Ball State, I'm going to USI, then Ball State can no longer recruit that student, or it would be a violation of our professional code of ethics in the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, which is our parent organization. Those rules have been lifted so that, and I can go into detail as to why at a later time, so now if a student says, well, I'm going to USI, Ball State no longer has to stop recruiting that student, and in fact can work out ways to, whether it be providing a better financial aid package or providing some more funding, continue to recruit that student. Also, they can now recruit students who are actually enrolled away from the university. That too was a violation, that once a student was enrolled at another university, you could not, a four-year university could not actively recruit students away from another four-year university. So we are seeing some of that. We have had some of our students receive information from other institutions with a gentle nudge. Recruitment, obviously COVID has impacted everyone, but we too are looking at and have implemented some strategies that based on our ability to do so now in a way that is ethical, but gives us some greater flexibility in recruitment. So for example, this year in looking at spring, I know that there were around 200 students who were admitted at USI going into the fall from Vandenberg and Warwick counties alone who did not enroll, but by cross-referencing that data with some other national data, I know that they didn't enroll at other places either. At the time, early fall, they had not enrolled. It doesn't mean that they had not looked out to enroll in the spring, but we are doing outreach to those students to encourage them and encourage them to apply for spring. It's not too late to enroll, but that subset, so the fall 20 cohort coming in, all of those students now are getting and can be recruited by other universities. So what that means for us from a retention standpoint is that we have to continue to engage at a deeper level, identify early challenges that students may be facing and see how we can rectify those across campus. So like I said, I wanted to keep this high level so that we could get to some questions. So with that said, I want to transition now in speaking in some of the collaborative work that's happening and give Dr. Dixon an opportunity and Amy an opportunity to talk about briefly, their areas. So Dr. Dixon, if you can go over a little bit with graduate enrollment and how things are happening there.
Certainly, Rashad, and thank you again. I'll try to keep this as succinct as possible so that we get some time for some questions. I'll go through these 3 points relatively quickly. In terms of the landscape, the graduate enrollment nationally is not that different than the undergraduate in terms of its competitive nature. Overall, however, graduate enrollment, particularly at the master's level, has seen some increases recently, but those increases are really limited to a few programs, those in the health services and nursing, education, and engineering, probably the top 3. In most other academic disciplines, master's levels enrollment are decreasing. In terms of our recruitment landscape, USI's graduate programs have always had a 2-tiered level of recruitment strategy, recruiting both from within our graduates and alumni, and also from external sources. The challenges that poses to us are obviously manifold. As Rashad has spoken with respect to the demographics and the decreasing undergraduate student body at USI over the last several years, that obviously affects the graduate enrollment as well, as our alumni, our graduates, as they decrease in number, we're seeing a smaller percentage enroll in our programs, which has really compelled us to focus more aggressively on external markets. But there are, again, challenges there as well, as more and more universities offer their programs entirely online and also in accelerated formats. We have quite a few programs that are following those models, and we're in discussions with others in terms of moving toward that type of approach in order to attract more students from a broader geographical range than we traditionally have. In terms of strategies by which to achieve this, we focused for the last year or so on one major point, and that being the removal of barriers to admission and enrollment. Anyone familiar with our graduate enrollment processes can comment on the relative difficulty in achieving that. And we've taken a number of approaches, a number of steps in order to make it easier upon our prospects to complete that application and to enroll in their program of choice. This will culminate in about a month from now when we'll be unveiling, rolling out a brand new graduate studies application that I hope will have significant impact on future enrollments. We've also been focusing on targeted digital marketing, primarily with our online programs. And we've partnered with Dr. Cowden in online learning to to launch several campaigns in the digital space in order to bolster our enrollment. We also annually maintain a presence in college fairs regionally, from which we generate leads and follow up with them and try to push them toward application and subsequently enrollment. And lastly, we have a number of on-campus events in the last several months or so. Those have been virtual, but events and fora which are targeted as much toward graduate students, current graduate students, as they are toward undergraduate students, with the goal of sparking an interest in our graduate programs amongst our students and getting them to that point where they choose to apply and enroll in one of our programs. So we're really doing all that we can in the sphere of the strategies and trying to overcome the challenges. And I know that I speak for Rashad and everyone else as well, that we are greatly appreciative of all the things that those of you who are participating with us today do on a daily basis, of speaking highly of our programs, whether they be to individuals in the community or other interested parties. But we need your continued support in that regard as we work collaboratively to reach a sustainable level of enrollment and exceed that as well. So I'll conclude that here and turn it back to Rashad.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to invite Emmy to discuss international enrollment, and then following that, any questions that you have, we'll be happy to respond to.
Thank you, Rashad, and thank you for inviting us to be part of this, because when we think about in recruitment and enrollment, that does include international students. It's the grand picture of having our students here. And I'll start a little bit by the landscape for international recruitment, pulling information from our so-called Bible, the IIE Open Doors report. We know that there were about 1,075,496 international students for the academic 2019-20. And that's a drop from the previous year by 1.8%. And we don't have the 20, so this semester we'll be reporting for numbers for last year. And that will hopefully give us more information about the trend, but overall the trend is going down in terms of international students coming here. Top 10 countries of origin for international students are, of course, India and China. And then we have South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, Canada, Mexico, Brazil. And for USI, for the fall 2020, our office was serving about 200 non-immigrant students, and that includes undergraduate, graduate, student visas and non-student visas that were for people who are in different capacity here in the United States and in Evansville in particular. And out of those people, those students, 92 were living on campus. And I thought that's important to mention because we have them close by. For the spring, we have 146 students that are CVIS active. I don't have the full enrollment numbers yet because normally we wait until the first week of classes to confirm the enrollment of the students and see who is back, who is not back for various reasons. And out of this, 61 students are in the intensive English program. We don't have full information for the fall 21 just because our students apply somewhat different from the domestic side, depending on when their school year ends, when they're following the situation, the economic situation, the COVID situation. So there are a lot of factors that are impacting their decision. But and that is dictating also our strategies for recruitment of these students. We always consider the in-country and international recruitment. And then we also think about the students who would be studying in the intensive English program and students who would be studying in the university. And we start with our target countries, but we try to focus on the low-hanging fruit, which means we're trying to identify countries that offer scholarships, that have limited budget, and try to find the best fit basically for what these governments or universities are looking for, and then try to offer the what we have here and try to create these partnerships. And we do have different partnerships with governments and different universities around the world. We also use leads. We purchase leads from companies so that we can put those in our communication cycle and try to get the students basically from that point to bring them here. A lot of times, word of mouth is a strategy that is quite effective, especially for certain nationalities. And we do focus on our social media, try to offer scholarships, and continue to be in touch with a lot of our the Education USA advisors, embassies, the organizations that we collaborate to find out what are some projects in different countries, what are some things that we can apply for in order to bring more students to the university. We have exchange programs, we have the study abroad programs, and that's also other ways that the word comes out for what we have at the university. With the COVID, before we were able to do a lot of travel to the specific countries and to meet in person with our partners, because international recruitment is really all about relationship building and showing that you are the best fit. But with the COVID, our entire strategy basically almost came down to zero, because we're down to armchair recruitment and trying to just maintain the relationship with the partners and focus on retention rather than recruitment. We continue to purchase leads. We continue to communicate with our partners to maintain those relationships, and but it's almost impossible to build new relationships. So the focus is on retention and then the need of the students that we have here. But with that, the need of our current partners also increase. So we're really trying to navigate all these different fields. We're following the economic situation across the world, and that's really impacting the number of students that are even deciding to come to the United States, not to mention the perception of the political situation and the perception of safety in the United States, which is a factor that we it's almost with every meeting we promise it's a safe place. And it's just the reality of where we are. The other challenge that we constantly have to kind of navigate is the rating. We don't really have that many official ratings. And for example, China is a country where ratings are highly considered. A lot of embassies don't even want to consider talking to us because we're not on the 100 universities list. And of course, the competition is they're offering more scholarships and other benefits for the students. So I'll stop there so we can have some time for questions.
Thank you very much, Emmy. And excuse me. At this time, if there are questions, feel free to submit those. We have just a couple of minutes left, so the timing, I think, the timing was great. I do want to say that to echo again to what Dr. Dixon had mentioned, all of the help from everyone across campus in so many different areas in collaborating with all of the enrollment efforts thank you for that.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say that if there are folks who want to understand more in greater detail about the specific tactics and groups and targeting that's done, please shoot me an email. I am happy to answer your questions there or talk with you individually, or should there be a number of emails or interest, then I'm happy to do a session along with members of the undergraduate admissions team to help you understand some of those specifics.
And I want to join to that. Thank you. It takes a village, and we couldn't do it without you.
Okay, so there's some questions. I do want to remind, if you are submitting questions, please submit those to Corinne. It will help me to manage some of those questions. I know that there's a question that was submitted for you, Dr. Dixon. Is the GRE required or optional for applications to the graduate programs, and is it program specific?
That's program specific. Currently, the MBA is the only program that still requires the GRE or the GMAT or the there's another test. It's a skill-based test, but there are waivers for those standardized examinations. And having reviewed applications now for more than a year or so, I would say that the vast majority of applicants and those accepted to the MBA choose the waiver approach rather than taking the GRE or the GMAT.
Okay, thank you for that. There was another question about the students in the Evansville area who were admitted but not enrolled, and how does that compare to prior years? A couple of caveats about that, that number and that process. We had, in prior years, traditionally, students who were admitted and did not enroll were put back into the system as transfer students for the following year. For those students that were, I'm sorry, not admitted, but inquiries, they were put in, and we continue to, for the community college students, continue to recruit them. As I said before, we could not reach out to students that enrolled in four-year institutions. And we looked at that data more on an aggregate than taking the data from the National Student Clearinghouse and appending some of our current data. So we weren't able to get as granular as we are right now. So I would need to go back to see how does that compare to to prior years. What I will say is that the information, based on the information I've seen, some of those students actually did enroll, then dropped and did not enroll anywhere else. That number, I do know, just for the number of students who did that, is a little higher than what we had traditionally seen, although it wasn't a massive number. What was surprising to me is that those students who they just chose not to go anywhere else after being enrolled and dropped. There was a question about our profile that had come directly to me. We had around 3.4 GPA, around 1080 SAT, but also keep in mind that we're no longer requiring test score for admission to the university. That was a change in policy that we instituted for this year. However, for students who are eligible for presidential scholars, they still have to submit a score in order to be eligible to be invited to those to that event. There was also a question about how to help as a faculty member. As I mentioned at the onset, the one area that I think, in particular for students who are applying earlier, where we can have a greater impact on our yield is by expanding the communication to those students, the engagement with those students at a wider and deeper level. So how we're doing that is getting students in contact through various means to other areas across campus. That does need to be done in a systematic way, so that we know that students that we're contacting, where they are in the process. So there are ways of working through with each college and program where the admissions offices can help facilitate some of that in terms of connecting students to faculty members to speak to their areas of interest in greater detail. Aside from that, whether it's a faculty member or not, I want to encourage everyone to just understand what we have as a university in terms of our facilities, in terms of our campus community, the availability of programs, keeping in mind that we have more programs than any other college or university that's within that 75 to 100 mile radius. Embracing who we are and the impact that we have on the region, and talking with others in your community, in your neighborhood, whether or not they have a high school age student that is looking to enroll. Our banding together to constantly speak and with the same drumbeat helps our general marketing, helps our brand by way of building intentionality in doing so, and building a confidence in the education that students have once they enroll, the experiences that they get, and their contributions once they have graduated and are alums. And so taking note of the students who are graduating, what are the things that they're going and are doing, and not even just students that are graduating, but students who are enrolled, projects that they're working on, anything that you think is unique, please send that information to the admissions office. The admissions office doesn't have all of that information all the time. It's not readily available in a format that speaks to every single program. Some faculty have continued relationships with students to where they know when they're making changes, or when they're having successes within their company or organization. Send that information to the admissions office. That in itself is powerful. There's nothing that we can invest in. There's nothing that we can do that is more powerful than the story of USI as it relates to the experience and our graduates and our alums.
If I could add on to that too, Rashad, very quickly, we implore our faculty and staff who are familiar with outstanding undergraduates, perhaps those who are approaching graduation and are uncertain of what their future is, to encourage them to look at the graduate programs available here, to reach out to the Graduate Studies Office or a specific program director. We would love to retain those students at this university for the continuation of their education.
Thank you. And then there was a question about students. Do we know why students leave before completing a degree? I'll tell you that we're doing a lot more work in that area to understand why students leave, with the goal of identifying those areas in which maybe we can do a better job of recognizing some of the signs earlier, as well as making adjustments, meeting the students where they are to help retain them. I don't have a singular answer for that right now, but what I can tell you is that there's a lot of work going into that through academic affairs in Brody's area, as well as excuse me, enrollment, and looking at some of the data points of students that are coming in. So with that, again, I want to thank you all. Thank you, Corinne and Emmy and Dr. Dixon, for joining me. And again, if you would like to get into some more detail, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, or even if you come up with a question afterward, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email. Thank you, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, Rashad.
All right, thank you.